here this morning at Tulane. And our first speaker and presenter is Lea Ellison. She's a producer and president of Strong Hearts Entertainment with 28 years experience in television, theater, and arts festivals, productions, management, and marketing. Next we have Michael Price. He's a writer and co-executive producer of the Fox television animated comedy series, The Simpsons. And then we also have Todd Erlandson, who is an architectural consultant on the Discovery Channel's show Monster House. We also have Harold Sylvester, who is a veteran actor whose credits include 17 feature films, including An Officer and a Gentleman, Karina, and more than 400 television appearances. And we also are welcoming Ed Nelson, who just recently received his Sidewalk Star downtown at the Hilton New Orleans Riverside for his paid-in-place role as Dr. Michael Rossi. They asked me to be as brief as possible because we have many speakers today, but I wanted to refer you to your bios because there's many more credits that these people have all accomplished.
Please hold your applause until the last person is introduced.
Thank you very much. But I'd like to welcome Lea.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to thank all of you all gentlemen for being here. All of us here have worked or are working in making episodic television series, and that's what we're here to talk with you all about this morning. And I want to just do a little bit of defining the terms. To start with, I think everybody knows what a television series is. Am I right? Does anybody not know what a television series is? We all know what a television series is. It's something that is broadcast over the airwaves, a network, PBS, or cable television channels in a recurring format in regularly scheduled time slots. Series are almost always produced in 1 hour or half-hour segments or multiples of those. And the primary market is the home viewing audience that quite often will pick up a series because it's at the time they happen to be watching television. And that's something I'm going to come back to later when we start to talk about what the future of the series is, because technology is changing that factor. But that traditionally series have been something that were dependent on a time slot. Series often have content that is self-contained within a single episode. This is not always true, but usually true, and traditionally has been true, although themes, characters, and plot structure unify the different episodes. Quite often each episode was self-contained so that later on, after the first run, you could put it into syndication, and it didn't matter if the episodes ran in sequence. And syndicators liked that a lot. Series are produced by independent production companies, by major film studios, and by the networks or cable channels themselves. And that's really all I'm going to say to start, just to say this is what we're talking about. Now I'm going to ask each of you all to speak a little bit about how does a series get from concept to air. What we have here are gentlemen with 4 very different types of experience. Todd Erlandson does Monster House, which is a redo the house reality show currently on the Discovery Channel. Michael is going to speak mostly about animation, but he's also done live action comedy series. Ed Nelson has done virtually everything but primarily hour-long series, if I read your resume correctly, and soap operas.
No, that's right.
But that's what...
Close enough.
You have more expertise in that area than any of the rest of us here, let's put it that way. And Harold was a semi-regular or regular on Married with Children, and has also done an hour-long series.
But I was actually also a writer-producer on the Stephen Bochco series, City of Angels,
right.
and NYPD Blue. And I'm a writer in my spare time.
Well, why don't we start? Why don't we start with you then, Harold, and talk about how does a series get from concept to air?
Often by a very circuitous route. I think there's no question that there are a lot of us out there who have ambitions about being creators of television product, but the portal, to get through, to networks, until very recently was very small. It's still small, but on the other side now, there are more receptors. So we go about, and then theoretically, I'll talk as a pure writer. The concept, comes from, life experience, from, newspaper articles. Obviously, can come from, from anywhere. All of us who write, practice. We find agents, who are often our guides, into the industry, and we submit to our agents, every thought, that's on our minds, hoping that that first arbiter, finds gets sparked about something, and is willing to, to carry the baton, to the next level. And that's when you're pretty much at the beginning levels.
And let's thank you. That's once you've got the interest.
Right.
Once somebody's interested, the agent's interested, then what happens? What happens if it's an animated series, for instance?
Yeah, animated, or let's say my world is sitcom world. There's, in Hollywood, they call this like 3 or 4 seasons, and there's a thing called a development season, which is usually, traditionally was like sort of the late fall, where the networks listen to pitches. So writers with an idea, once the agent has set them up, would go to the network or go to a studio and sit in the room with the executive and say, this is my idea. And if they hear dozens, maybe hundreds of pitches, out of those pitches, they decide to say, oh, that's a good one. Let's order a script, a pilot script, which is, sort of like a sample script or for a prototype script for the show. Then from that, all those scripts that are ordered, maybe a small percentage of then finally get called the green light to go ahead to make a pilot episode. And from those pilots, a handful then get put on the air in the fall. And from the ones that get put on the air, almost none of them survive. Exactly right. And maybe a couple stick around. So it is like a huge funnel of just ideas, winnow it down into pilot time. So right now in Hollywood, it's pilot season, which is the pilots are all being produced and shot right now, and they'll be handed in to the networks probably by the end of April, or in March or April, and they spend their time looking at them, and then they choose the ones they want, and there's a big thing called the upfronts, which is in New York, usually around the middle of May, where all the studios, all the networks hire halls like this, or big halls in New York City, to put on big presentations about how great their new shows for the fall are going to be, to impress advertisers to want to buy time on the air. And then instantly after that, all the advertisers decide which ones are going to be good or not. And then those shows get on the air.
Thanks, Michael. Now, Ed, what happens? Somebody wants a pilot. What happens when you actually start the pilot?
Well, I was under contract at Universal at the time, and my agent said it's a good time to get out there doing a series at Fox. And I said, well, what is this? He said, Peyton Place. I said, Peyton Place. The book? He said, yeah, they're going to try a series out of it. I said, I'm Catholic. I couldn't even read the book. he said, you got to be kidding. This got nothing like the book. He was just going to use the name of the people. So I went over and I did the pilot. I, was selected to do the pilot. I was selected over a vast search of 2 or 3 different people. And anyway, we did the pilot. And in the pilot, as in the book, Rossi, the part I played, was a high school principal. But when they put it out to a survey audience, they wanted to see a little more of the character. So they switched me to being the doctor. And in the pilot and in the series, I was used to take the audience to the various families that lived in Peyton Place, being a doctor and the only one in town. And I did pretty good. I think 7 out of my 9 patients died. And the reason was, if anybody got a cough, they were afraid to go to me. They said, oh God, they're writing me out. But I went to the producer, and that's Paul Monash, who passed away after last year receiving the Writers Guild of America Award. Marvelous guy. And I said, look, can I save somebody? And he said, saving people, very boring. I said, not to them. He said, yeah, to them too, it's boring. But so we did the pilot, and people hated it. When we went on the air, we got the worst reviews of all on TV Guide. Ryan O'Neal one time sent the review back after we were #1 in the nation, to the writer inside a hamburger, to make sure you could eat his words, as they say. And, so you never really know. Most of the shows you think are going to go don't, and most of the ones you think aren't going to go, somebody picks it up. So it's a very weird type of experience for the actor. I mean, like he said, we did a pilot at Universal called Border Town, and it was Casablanca in the West between Mexico and the United States. That was the border. I owned a bar. I was Rick. I wasn't Rick. I was Dick. You know, they really disguised it. And there was a line down the center of the bar. And on one side was the United States, one side was Mexico. And boy, did it go over good. You know, I mean, it...
And this is something that somebody thought was a good idea because it got as far as making the pilot.
That's right, and that's it. Like a lot of pilots, you know.
If I could interrupt just briefly, there's one thing I forgot to mention, which is the thing that sort of rules everything now, which is called testing. And when a pilot is made, then they take it often to Las Vegas, which is sort of a place where everyone from all over America comes, and they'll show it in a room with the people, a group of, say, 20 or 30 people, who are then given these little buzzers to hold, a red one and a green one. And as they watch the show, they're told to push the green buzzer when they see something they like and push the red buzzer when they see something they don't like. And the responses are computer analyzed, and then you can then watch the tape of the show with a bar graph showing like going up and going down.
What a treat for a writer.
Or for an actor. I'm sure actors are replaced in pilots all the time because they the testing didn't go. They tested badly.
And it might be just because somebody had an urge to go to the bathroom.
That's right.
On that button.
Oh, go ahead.
If we haven't talked much with Todd. Todd, you have a very different type of show that you're involved with one of these shows that there's so many of. They're so popular now where somebody goes in and tears a house apart and puts it back together quickly. How does that work? Is this sounding familiar to you, or is it a very different process?
I think it's a different process in our case because the production company that does Monster House had a successful series before that in a show called Monster Garage. So that had been running for a while, and the executive producer came up with this idea. There's a lot of makeover shows out there, and he had this idea of doing Monster House, which is, they say, more takeover, less makeover. So he has this kind of idea for a bigger show, and I think he pitched that to Discovery, and because of the success of their previous show, Discovery was willing to invest in it and see how it went. You know.
Tell me a little bit, each of you, about the production process itself. What happens from an episode? You've got a pilot made, the show's been picked up, it's ready to go on the air, and then what happens? You need to assemble a team, right? But I think with each of these different type of shows we're talking about, we have a very different time frame and different production process. And if we can talk a little bit about the differences here between doing a 1-hour series, doing a half-hour series in front of an audience, doing animation, and doing a reality-based show. I think we're very different things here. You want to start, Harold?
Yes, with one little qualification about the pilot process.
Right.
All producers don't have to go through that. If you're Dick Wolf, if you're Stephen Bochco, you get what's called commitment. You get X number of episodes that automatically are on the air, and it's usually 7 to 13. And that half season becomes your pilot. Is the bottom line. So they can assemble. It makes for a different kind of assembly. Because they can assemble with guarantees, and often can get better known names because they're often 13 episodes, down the line. So the process is often.
You mentioned the 13 episodes. 13 is a magic number for episodes.
It
Let's
is.
talk about why. Let's see. We know this, but I'm not sure everybody here does.
Well, season normally these days, it's gone down from 26. It traditionally was 26 for 1-hour dramas. It's now down to 22. But 13 is still that dividing line, is that magic mark that everybody ascribes to hit. And after that, after you've gone through that commitment, the number of shows that the networks buy after the 13 really gives you a fair indication about how much they like or respect you. If it's a 2-show buy, 6-show buy, or if they pick up the balance of the season, you're in. If they don't, then you're in trouble.
Yeah,
or
right.
if they do what is the scariest of all, if they just call and order scripts, then yeah, you get really nervous.
Everyone wants to get what's called the back 9.
Right.
You get that call from the network. You got 9 more to 22. And then sometimes they give you the back 9, and then they call back a month later. Oh, we only want 5.
Exactly.
And that usually means time to
See ya.
pack your office.
We had an unusual schedule because we shot, we were on the air twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays generally, half-hour shows. We shot it as an hour. And so there was no problem. We had two directors that did 95% of the shows. They were opposite. One moved the camera all the time. The other one didn't move the camera at all. And it made for an interesting show from time to time. But one year we were on 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We had 2 crews working at the same time. The actors were going between 2 or 3 different stages all the time trying to figure out, you know, what script they were doing. And we were on for a year at 9 o'clock, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And we got letters from husbands saying, hey, 9 o'clock's my prime time too, pal. We went back to 2 a week after that, you know. But we were filmed. And we were the first continuing story in prime time, and the show was very successful, even when it went off the air after 5 years, because our network, ABC, had to sell it to have money to buy and produce new series. We took over at Fox. Fox had been closed for months because of the debacle in Cleopatra. And so we had the whole studio at Fox to do Peyton Place. And we did great scenes outside with cars. People refer to us sometimes as a soap opera. Well, we weren't a soap opera at all. Of course, they shot on tape, and they don't shoot outside. We did snowball fights and all things in the park across the street. It added a lot of production value. And, of course, the book preceding us brought all the non-believers in.
Non-believers. Talking again about the production process.
Sure.
For animation, it's considerably different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's generally a live action show sort of acts on a sort of a week sort of process where once the script is ready, usually like on Monday, there's a read-through of the script with the actors, which is followed by a brief rehearsal while the writers get notes from the network telling them why the script is no good. and then there's a lot of rewriting going on. And every day the script changes as the actors rehearse. And usually by Friday, the show is taped in front of a live audience, and then it gets edited and put on the air. An animated show like The Simpsons is about a year-long process from idea to going on the air. Partly we spend more time on the show because we have sort of the animation process allows more time, and I think that's part of the reason why The Simpsons has endured is that the writing is very writing intensive, and a lot of time is spent on fixing the script. But also the animation process takes several months. Some of the animation is done in California, but a great deal of it is sent overseas to Korea, where the animation workforce is cheaper.
Okay.
So, but
Thank
that's
you.
how it works.
And Todd, now when we do a Monster House, from
Our
start to
production,
finish.
our production schedule is much shorter. We have a 5-week production schedule from when we, in the first week, we scout a house. We have an idea for a house, and we try and find the house that's right for that. And that means we have to get a homeowner to donate the house that's willing to turn it into a Mardi Gras house or a tropical island house. The second week is spent kind of coming up with ideas for the build, for the things that will change, and that's my role along with the production designer, where we're making sketches and coming up with ideas about what the people will build. The third week it goes to the production company, and they figure out, well, can those ideas actually be built in the time frame that we have for the project? And then the fourth week is time assembling all the materials and the things to get it ready. And then the fifth week is the build week. So that's when the 5 contractors come in and they try to get the whole thing done in 5 days. And at the end of that, then we have all the kind of raw footage that it can go into post-production and they can turn it into a television show.
So from start to finish for one house.
I'd say about 10 weeks. Probably 5 weeks in production, 5 weeks in post-production.
So that week that we see on the screen is
It's-
really it's just the end of it.
That's right.
The end of this whole process.
That's right. And then how they put it together in the editing process really is what turns it into something that's watchable, right? Because at the end, there's just a lot of footage every day, and to make that into a television show is a lot of work for the editors.
I think that's true of all the series, possibly animation. Is animation edited as it goes?
It's sort of pre-edited in that it's the animation is blocked out in what's called a storyboard, so that there's not much time to do editing, classic sort of where you change different angles because it's all been animated a certain way. But there's editing in terms of trimming the show down to make it fit the time frame, but that's about it in terms of that.
Yes. Harold.
Also, to add to Michael's description of the week, his description was of half hour,
Yes.
Sitcom. It's a different process in 1 hour, and that the script is ostensibly done before we start production. It's a one-camera operation as opposed to a 3 or 4-camera operation. And actors often, they get there by audition process, if they're not series regulars. And then, when the day they walk on set is the first day that they meet the director in most cases. They audition for writers and other producers. They'll meet, but the directors are often in production all the time, so they'll be meeting them for the first time. And it is pretty much shot like a movie, out of sequence, which means you can start right in the middle of the script as your first shot, and be at the beginning the next day and at the end, the next, which is the way all movies are shot. And it's about an 8-day schedule for each episode, and that's pretty much it. As opposed to 5 days for a
That's
sitcom.
right, yeah.
All right, we have a pretty good idea of what we're doing here. What makes a series successful, Ed?
Well, I'm probably one of the few people that know that.
That's why I asked you first.
Well, that's why actors go to see bad plays. It makes them appreciate good ones. Probably the charm of some of the performers, the natural abilities, the great talent, and
I'm sure that's it.
come on, give me a break. Who the hell is that? What makes them successful? I don't know. I suppose it's a trend of the times. Look at what they're showing now.
What was the best pilot or show you ever did that just didn't make it? That you thought was actually good but didn't make it?
Well, we did one that went into it became a book series. That's what happens to pilots that are almost good enough. You've already shot 2. So they put 4 of them out, and this was called Doctors' Private Lives, which sounds, kind of wonderful. But 4 was all they wanted, and 4 is what they got.
You ever thought about this, Harold?
I do.
Yeah.
It's a series called Angie the Detective.
Oh, God, that's wonderful.
Yeah, you remember it well, don't you?
Yeah.
And so, but he was an ABC mistake, and it was Angie Dickinson and stuff, who I just
Good
love.
performer. Good
She's a
performer.
wonderful, honest woman. Just one of the
Great
greatest. But bottom line is a David Gerber, TV series, and they wanted to try a different format. It was going to be a half-an-hour drama. Serialized, so which meant really tight, concise stories, and they put together cast, and I was one of the regulars, along with a couple of people, and I'm losing my thought on one who I know, Angela Bassett. I'm sorry, Angie Dickinson, Angela Bassett, and Halle Berry were the other regulars. Wow. ABC said, we don't think so.
Yeah.
And they missed a chance of that one.
There you go.
Well, that's so often the case, is that the networks, even with their testing, whatever, they don't have no idea what's good or what's not good. There's legendary stories that NBC, the people who ran NBC hated Seinfeld. They only kept it on because they wanted to keep Jerry Seinfeld to a different kind of contract, because they thought he might be like Jay Leno now. So they'll keep his show on for a while, just to throw him a bone. And I heard a story that a writer I knew was going in for a meeting. This is years ago, and at NBC, and one of the executives at NBC had just finished watching the pilot of ER, and he said, "Let's take a look at this junk. What is this? This is terrible. Well, this never worked, And then they did the testing on it, which was amazing. Everyone loved it, and they didn't believe it. They said, "Test it again. These people can't like this. This can't be a good show." And then they tested it again, and they said, "Okay, we'll put it on." So there's nobody knows anything.
And Todd, do you have a thought as to why these house remodel shows are so
Well, I think it's really,
successful?
I found it
what's
interesting
appealing?
in our show, where the first 4 shows were done before the show aired. And after the show aired, the feedback that comes back from the audience is so immediate now, with email and websites, that immediately they went into kind of adjusting the format and revising the format based on viewer comments. So very quickly they were able to figure out how people were liking it, what parts of it they liked, how they liked or didn't like the host or other people on the show, and they were able to adjust and rework the upcoming shows based on that feedback. So that was pretty interesting.
So you're very, very market oriented, is what I'm hearing, and this is something that you're able to do more and more quickly now because of the communication tech.
Absolutely.
Well, the soaps are a little different, because, they're written by 5 or 6 different people, and they may all 5 of them be writing my character and not knowing what the other ones wrote. I remember in Capital, once I said my daughter, Sloane, was like a young fawn. When she was young, she was so delightful and light and bright. And the next week I was saying, she was a tough bitch. You know, I said, wait a minute. I just said, he said, look, don't forget, they're ironing. I said, who's ironing? He said, the audience. And they only watch 2.5 times a week. You know. I said, well, am I on the 2.5 times I hope that they're watching? And I had a wonderful line one time. It was almost philosophical. It was so good. And he said, don't forget they're ironing. I said, well, make them burn the shirt. You know, make them go, oh, my goodness, that's right. Oh, I burned the shirt. What's wrong with that? He said, we cut it.
There's a new measure of success if the shirts are
Well,
burned.
you know, I was like
love
Tootsie
it.
in there for 5 years. You know, they had wonderful film people that they brought in to do this one soap, entirely different. All film people, Richard Egan, Rory Calhoun, you know, Julia Adams, myself, all film people, never done soaps before, and they were going to do a different kind of a soap. And it was different. It was so different, it almost went off. You know, they changed it, they made it a soap, they changed producers, they changed. You know, they're the crew, for instance, at CBS are paid by CBS, not by the production company. In film series, the crew stays on as long as the series goes, and they're after it working very well. In CBS, you know, if the series soap goes off, they'll do a game show, they'll do a quiz show, an award show. I mean, there's always an award show. You know, Mrs. America, Miss Teenage America, this music, that music, Western music, Grammys and more.
Yes.
You know, now they got all these actors awards. I should think about going out for that. But, you know, it's just a hobgoblin. You know, do you remember the old punch cards when you were a kid? You know, you take a little thing, you push it in, and you put a little piece of paper out, and you won something. Well, that's the way the networks work. They don't know. They don't have a magic ball.
Yeah.
Some people do well for over a period of years. Aaron Spelling, for instance, you know. I did his first show. The first script he ever had done. He was married to Carolyn Jones at the time. And it was with Danny Thomas and Marlo Thomas's first show. A Western, Zane Grey Theater. Danny Thomas in Zane Grey Theater, a Lebanese cowboy. And yet it was a good show. It was a good show. It's a hit and miss proposition. They don't waste a lot of money. You know, the pilot, they pay the actors more, everybody more, and the production company's better for the pilot than the regular series, normally, you know.
Why
They
is
tell
that?
a story about an actor that died and went to heaven, and St. Peter said to him, hey, you're an actor. I saw you on TV, right? He said, yeah, well, He said, we've got a special place up here for actors. Really? Yeah, come on. You want to show you? Look, I got a tape. And he put this tape on. There's palm trees and a little wave watching, you know, a cool breeze and bikinis running around. I said, boy, that's nice. I said, that's where you want to go? He said, yeah, okay. All of a sudden, he's in a garbage heap in the dark. He said, what is it? Anybody here? He said, yeah, I'm here. He's with St. Peter. No, excuse me. St. Peter said, I was going to go to the place with the palm trees and beautiful beaches and everything. The other guy said, oh, he must have showed you the pilot.
That's great. Any other thoughts about this business? But what makes a series successful?
I think it's lightning in a bottle. You know,
That'll do it.
it's a combination of a good idea and so often I think it's the casting. You know, like I think TV, they say, you know, is about people that there's a lot of people who are television actors that then don't succeed as film actors because there's just a different quality. You know, on TV, like big TV stars are people that the audience likes, connect with in some way. And I'm sure Harold and I would know, like casting in pilot season is just hit or miss sometimes. It's based on who's available, and there are shows that say Friends. There's all these stories about, oh, this guy turned down Friends, whatever. You know, Friends might not have been the same hit show if it was someone else besides Jennifer Aniston. It just might not have, you know.
Exactly right. But bottom line is, I mean, chemistry has a lot to do with every successful series, but you don't often learn that until what the chemistry is until after everybody's assembled.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to assemble a cast, I mean, you look for for elements that you hope will go together. You know, then you get an actor who's just a total jerk, and and nothing works for anybody.
Nothing works.
Yeah.
No, Ed, sorry, not you.
We look for the same thing in our show. I can see when they put together who the actual team is that's going to build the show. They're kind of anticipating what the relationships will be between those people, and how the host will be able to to kind of get them to complete the project, but also have enough drama and kind of excitement in the process that people will want to watch that.
You know, quite the reverse is true also, because Anthony Quinn did a series that I worked in with him at Universal called A Man in the City. He was much too big for television. And the same thing is true of a lot of the others. Lee Marvin, you know, M Squad. You know, I worked with Lee a lot at Universal in those days. And, I mean, it was just impossible. None of those series went very well. And yet in motion pictures, they're massive stars, and they should be.
Because it's a different medium.
Oh, yeah.
Different people.
When I did motion pictures, well, let's go to another subject.
All right, we are going to move on to another subject now because we're going to get down to the real nitty-gritty of all this, which is show me the money. How does the series get financed? Let's start with the animation. You
sure.
want to take that? Run with it.
Well,
Where's the
most
money?
series are financed, it's called deficit financing usually, which is that a production company or a studio is the one that pays the money up front to make the pilot. I've made a pilot, so I'm not familiar exactly how much it might cost, but it's a good deal of money. And once the show, let's say, there's many pilots that are paid for and never get anywhere, and that money is just, that's gone forever.
And let's go back. That money comes from whom?
From the production company,
From
the
the production
studio.
company,
The
okay.
studio. Once the network orders the show, then the network pays the studio what's called a licensing fee, which is like pay them so much per episode, and that helps cover some of the cost of the production, but usually not all of it. So the show is being produced at a deficit by the production company, the studio, Warner Brothers or 20th Century Fox, and they keep spending the money to make the episodes. They get some money back from the networks, but it's really all a huge high-stakes gamble that a show will reach enough episodes, usually 100 episodes, to be able to then be sold into syndication and be shown on local channels. That's where the production company, the studio, makes their money back, because then they own the show and they get all the money back. So for all the shows that fail, they're all hoping to get that one show, Friends or Everybody Loves Raymond or The Simpsons, that will then make them all their money back.
But a strange phenomenon has been happening. You know, I mean, probably the last 5 years, you know, maybe as far back as the last 10, because your bottom line is, you know, the only independents, you know, were in television. You know, the Bochcos and the Dick Wolfs and you know, those kind of people. And then the network started saying, well, we need to own the shows.
Right.
Bochco and those guys actually own their, you know, their shows, and they had a license, agreement with, you know, they were the studio essentially, with the network. Network said, you know, we need to own our own shows, you know, and stuff, which, you know, it's cut down on creativity. You know, I mean, the creative guys have got to go somewhere else, you know, and stuff, if somebody else is going to be making the ultimate decisions. So it kind of changed the formula a little bit. And the guys, I mean, the only people who could resist were the big guys like Bochco and Wolf and you know, and some of those other guys. Then the studios or networks, you know, started becoming a part of you know, vertically integrated corporations.
What do you think caused that change?
Well, you know, the business model. I mean, for one, you know, when Gulf and Western owns Paramount and then buys CBS and you know, et cetera, you know, they own the whole package. Doesn't matter who's doing it, you know, they own everything.
I think they'd love to have a piece of $1 billion that Friends makes. You know, NBC would love to get $1 billion.
Exactly right.
Everybody would love to get $1 billion.
What it's done, though, is it's forced even the big guys, you know, to get on board. Steve Bochco just got an agent for the first time in his career 6 months ago. You know, because all of a sudden the shows that he's been doing traditionally that he owned, he doesn't own anymore. You know, that whole thing has changed.
So is this making the producers more employees or contractors of the studios rather than just suppliers or vendors?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the networks had a big inplay the entire time, although not as much as they have today. I remember we were doing a series called Emergency over at Universal. Jack Webb produced it. And the two guys that had the lead in the Emergency were not particularly wonderful actors. I mean, they could jump off the fire engine, you know, and yell, fire! You know, hose, bring the hoses. And the second year they were going to go on, they both got sick before the production started, and they wanted a raise. And Jack Webb was furious, you know. And I was on the board at the Guild at the time, and they said, bring them up. You know, they signed a contract, bring them up. I'll sit on the jury, and we'll hang them. And they said, no. They said, by God, I will do that, Jack. And we were in the office working hard one afternoon after production. And the next week, when we got ready to bring him up on charges, The network gave him the raise. NBC said, here, gave him the money. He said he was furious.
We've been talking a lot about networks, but cable is a big player in this now.
Right.
And so
Cable,
your show, for instance, is on the Discovery Channel.
Yes.
And is that a different?
I'm not sure about how it's actually financed, but I do see that Discovery Channel has specific television shows that meet their criterion that they need. And I know that the production company that I work for has done a series of shows, American Chopper and Monster Garage and Monster House, along the same lines that seem to work for Discovery. So I think Discovery goes back to them and asks them for additional ideas and kind of ways to expand that value that they have in the shows that they have already.
Well, if I wanted just to bring back one thing that Harold said about the networks having more of a stake, I believe, and I think a lot of people believe, that has cut down on creativity to a great deal because the networks are now in the business of trying to replicate things that are successful. So they've always been in that business, but now they're not just the ones picking ideas that other people have. They're the ones that are creating the ideas. So you'll see NBC once this sort of trend started. They kind of ran themselves into a brick wall by trying to duplicate Friends, and like they had 12 shows that were basically Friends living in a big city somewhere, and it's more of a corporate bottom line culture as opposed to taking a chance on a creative person's idea.
Well, the proliferation of the reality shows too, unlike Todd's reality show, where all of a sudden they're alone, except for the cameraman, the sound man, and all of that, and people in the audience, they don't realize that they're cameramen, and they don't want to know. They want to pretend that those people are really alone out in the middle of the desert, and alligators are in the swamp are crawling all over them. And of course, it's all nonsense. It's all scripted. It's all prepared. And sure, they ad-lib like crazy, and they cut out the dirty words, some of them, and then leave the other ones in. Those are accidental. And so all of that is the network trying to follow the trend of the reality shows or whatever show they happen to be. Friends in one case, and there are others.
They'll always do that. They'll always find, usually it's the thing that no one expected to be a hit becomes a hit. And then, oh my God, we've got to do 100 shows like that. And then everybody's bored of that. And then the new one comes in that just someone thought of that was out of the blue. And then, wow, that's a really original show. Let's make 100 more like that.
Also, you must
that's
remember,
what they've always done. That's what
they've
always
been involved in creative financing. Well, now, of course, creative finance is taken on all capital letters. Because, you see, they have a looping room, let's say, where you have to go in and put sound back on in case of a noise on a scratchy film or something like that. Well, those people work all year long, whether there's anything there or not. Sometimes you go back and loop things that don't really have to be looped, but it'll be charged off to the studio.
Oh, sure.
And the biggest one, I think, is James Garner, when he owned a piece of Rockford. And he didn't get anything out of it, as it turned out. It was on for years and was very, very successful. Yeah. And he started looking at the records, and they had a wooden box in the alley that a car smashed through. $400. Jimmy said, I could have built that for $20. But they charged $400 because they had 3 people work on it or something, and the unions require that type of response. Another one is an outfit called Stembridge that rents the guns. I used to be a reserve deputy in Los Angeles. I could buy the gun for maybe $120. But they were getting $300 a week for renting the same gun I could have bought.
Yeah.
You referred a minute ago to the unions. Let's talk about that a minute. I know
About what?
the unions.
Oh.
The entertainment industry is heavily
Let's hear it for the
unionized.
unions, you non-union people out there,
And,
because I'm retired from 3 of them. They're the most important thing that ever happened in the world to anyone.
And now
Except,
so there's one opinion. Todd, I'm going to go right to the cable and reality show thing. Are the reality shows union shoots?
I think in general they're not, and I think they're thinking about changing that, which would make a big difference for a lot of the reality shows because the cost would go up considerably.
Maybe some of them would go off.
Yeah, maybe they would.
Really, let's talk briefly about what are the role of the unions? What is the role of the unions? It's very important in the entertainment.
Yeah, well, I'm a member of the Writers Guild of America,
Okay.
and I'm also a member of AFTRA, which is a television performers union. The Writers Guild, I mean, the unions generally are there to help to look out for the people who are their members and to make sure that they're paid accordingly and are treated fairly. And I think it's true what Ed said is that the networks and the studios will always try to find a way, if they can, to not pay what they're to not be fair because it's not in their interest. They want to make as much money as they can. So I think the Writers Guild and SAG and it's also called the Directors Guild, are very important in that way.
It was my impression, and I was a member, when I was working as an art director and an assistant art director in Hollywood, I was a member of the Society of Motion Picture and Television Art Directors, which is an IA union. And it seemed to me that later on, I did some more work with unions in different settings, and it seemed to me that one of the things the entertainment unions are unique in, and it is one of the few industries where there are always more prospective workers than there are jobs.
My God, yes.
Right.
Which is not necessarily true in any other industry.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the unions have a role as ensuring quality control along with other things.
Yeah. I would
Yes.
say, I'm sorry, that the trend towards reality TV, the networks love it because people certainly like to watch it, but also because they can hire people who are, in my case at least, I would call writers, but they don't call them writers, so they're not allowed, they're not Writers Guild, and they can pay them whatever they want to pay them. So on Survivor or on any Joe Millionaire or whatever, these people, they call them story editors, and they're the ones who really write copy, but they're not called writers, and they're able to sort of
And
get
this is
around the union
segue
rules.
a
that
bit
way.
into the next thing we want to talk about. What do you see as the future of series TV? Harold, where's it going?
Yeah, and if I can just back up just a little bit, you know, I think, you know, and I agree with Michael that, you know, the unions are absolutely necessary to you know, I mean, establish a baseline. But, you know, I mean, again, you know, because of the technology, you know, kind of, you know, the democratization of the industry these days, as a result of technology, unions are in trouble. You know, so, I mean, you know, it's the finger in the dike, you know, kind of concept. And you know, I think they're going to have to change, you know, in order to keep up with what's going on. You know, bottom line is, you know, if you go to Cannes Film Festival, or, you know, or to Sundance, you're not going to find union representation in the movies that are getting made there. And the majority of the movies that are going to be made from here on, you know, are going to be with people no union has ever heard from. You know, nobody's ever paid a union due, and stuff. So, you know, I mean, there's a job ahead of us. You know, I mean, to keep that under control, so that people not exploit it. You know, because we will be back to that very quickly. And the next question was about.
What do you see as the future of series television?
You know, I think it's you know, again, you know, with so many technologies, you know, it's a morphing form. You know, there are actually people, you know, there were 2 deals made just, you know, this past month for series that started on the internet, you know, and stuff, as streaming video and stuff, and they just made deals. You know, 2 separate companies made deals for series that, you know, that were on the internet to go to DVD. Those DVDs are now going to be in Blockbuster. And so the form, you know, I mean, the networks, I mean, don't have a monopoly on the form. The broadcast industry doesn't have a monopoly on the form. And so people who are desperate to get their product out there, you know, I mean, to be creative, are going to, you know, knock on your door, you know, via your email.
This is going to come back to what I mentioned to you at the very beginning, where I emphasized that traditionally series have been time slot dependent, have relied very heavily on their time slots. That is what technology is removing. That
It's taking
factor
that absolutely away.
from series. And how do you see that affecting it, Ed?
Well, I understand how that works. You know, right now, for instance, because of the actual theft of our DVDs and also the tapes. This year, I'm a member of the Academy, of course, and I'm voting for the Oscars and the nomination for Oscars and so forth. Most of the product they sent me this year, every year, they send me about 60 tapes. Last year it was 50 DVDs and 10 tapes. This year it's 10 DVDs and the rest are all tapes. And the reason is I think they have the tapes marked. I had to sign an affidavit that it wouldn't leave my house.
Right.
And they haven't, except when I left. I took a couple of them under my coat, showed them to my sister, put them back under my coat and brought them back. But I was followed by a car with black windows. I felt bad about it, but I diverted myself so they got away.
But they actually have started to prosecute somebody here.
Yeah,
Carmine
someone in
Carini.
Chicago.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you know from Godfather 2 and I mean, a lot of the movies. You know, actually, a copy. The tapes are all coded, and a copy it turned up on the internet.
One of the big misunderstandings is they talk about, you know, athletes making so much money, $10 million a year, and so forth in sports, and they compare it to actors. They say, well, look how much money actors make. Well, the difference is enormous, and the biggest difference is most of the athletes are getting their money from commercials that are on the air, not the ticket guys that go to the games, but commercials on their television product. In acting, you go to the theater because of the actor, not because of the commercial, although they show them. They show a Coke commercial, they'll get you peanuts and things like that, and they show previews of things. But you go there because of the actor. Now, You may go to the football game because of the football player that's so great, like our guy from Brobridge that's going to win the game Sunday. And you go because of him. But he doesn't make that millions of dollars because you're there. He makes the millions of dollars because of all the commercials that are running. For instance, this, $2 million, $3 million for 15 seconds in the Super Bowl.
Amazing, isn't it?
So it's different in acting.
Yes.
And the money they make comes from the fact that you're going there to see them,
Which is true.
not commercials that are paying for their salaries.
Well, that's true. I think that in terms of your question as well, that the model of network television is based around commercials. So it's all
Free
about
TV.
It's all about getting people. The commercials. The show is sort of just like a thing to have between commercials. So how the network looks at
That's
it,
true.
and
That's
as long
how
as
it
people are
started.
watching and they see a commercial and their ad rates are based on the ratings, and that's why they have these things called the sweeps, where they're able to set their ad rates. And I know that people are very concerned, in Hollywood because there's a lot of new technology that allows you to not have to watch commercials. There's TiVo, which I have and I love it, but it may put me out of business because people don't watch the commercials so much anymore. And they're finding ways now to put the commercials in the show. So there's a technology now that I believe allows them to, if it's an outside scene, you're walking down the street, and they'll digitally put in a billboard for the commercial sponsor, and that's how you get the commercial.
Free
Aren't
watches.
we
They used to give
sneaky?
us free watches.
Not only that, but in that thing, they're green screen the background and have an advertisement. For some company, because of cable, because of broadcast, they can actually do that locally. There'll be a different message, for different neighborhoods, for different zip codes, different area codes, and so there's a whole lot of revenue, going on there.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but my free TV costs about $50 a month.
Yes, isn't that the truth?
But the other kind of thing they're doing is product.
Let's
Oh,
get
go ahead.
Todd,
Sure.
yes.
I just wanted to ask about. It seems to me that even though we talked about how series need to be big, like The Simpsons and Seinfeld, and a lot of people need to buy into watching them. Now it seems like there's a lot more series out there because of cable TV, so that series are becoming kind of more specific. They're going after a more specific audience.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Certainly,
Like a niche.
certainly, Monster Garage are
Sopranos.
things that are happening on HBO. So it seems like there's more opportunity for series out there, and production costs seem to be coming down also, so you can make more series.
Yeah, well, the network model is sort of like in a way, a thing that's been around for a long, long time, and is people every year they say it's dead or it's dying. And,
And it
I don't know
never
if
has.
it hasn't yet, but the HBO model is interesting because HBO makes their money not from advertising but from people who subscribe. So that's why The Sopranos is a show that makes people want to get HBO. That's how they
And the
make
new
all the
Turner
money.
show is doing very well.
And thank you all very much. It's been fun. Thank you.